Hello and welcome. Today I'm doing a bunch of questions that I got on my Surface Pro 4 review. The first one I'm going to answer is from Kevin Rush. He asked, why did you test and review the lowest cost Power M version? I was thinking a professional would really want to test and use the more powerful and capable models. And I totally agree. In fact, when I got my Surface Pro 3, I got the one with 8 gigs of RAM, the i5 processor, so I got something that cost considerably more than the base level model. But the number one question I got on that review was, hey, if I get the cheap one, is it going to work well? So it just seemed to me like a pretty good idea that should be the thing that I test. That's why I got the low end version. I did end up sending my Surface Pro 4 back because it was just a review model. And I'm still using my Surface Pro 3, which is, a year and a half old. Still runs pretty well. Still has kind of more of that RAM. So yeah, still love it. Great review, but I disagree on needing a type cover. Yes, if you need to work on your lap or deploy and close your Surface often, this seems like a good fit. For doing illustration, I find that using a Bluetooth keyboard is much better for workflow, and the best thing about the setup is the keyboard doesn't have to be right in front of the screen where your hand can be while you're drawing. You can easily place it on the side of the Surface for all Control-Z and shortcut keys that you need. Bonus, you don't have to keep buying type covers when you upgrade your Surfaces. I think he makes a great point, and I think what it comes down to is what's the best fit for you. It was also one of the most misunderstood moments of my Surface Pro 4 video. I said that you don't need a type cover, but you kind of need a type cover. What I meant was that it's not absolutely necessary to have a keyboard in order to use a Surface, but I personally don't think it's a very good user experience at all if you don't have one, and it becomes very frustrating to use at times. Have you encountered any graphic driver crashes? My Surface Pro 4 arrived on the 19th of November, and I have a very important presentation on the 21st. I've read about crashes in the forums, and I'm kind of in a dilemma as to whether I should take my SP4 or my MBA for the presentation. I'm way too late to answer this question for you, I'm sorry. But I still think it's a good question because there are a lot of questions I got in general that were kind of like this about the just overall software quality of the Surface and how often does it crash. Now, I personally, in my time with the Surface Pro 4, did not have any problems with it in terms of major crashes, but with Windows 10 in general on the Surface Pro 4 and the Surface Pro 3, I found a lot of bugs and a lot of quirks and a lot of little frustrating things that kind of drive me nuts when I use it from time to time. For example, twice in this past week, I had to do a hard restart on my computer just for it to recognize the type cover. I did ask on your first review, but I'll ask on this one too, whether you have tried using Corel Painter to see if it works with this model. I haven't used Corel Painter partly because it's a fairly expensive program and I don't want to invest in another painting program that costs that much money. It's over $400, I think. But with that said, this is Windows 10. So anything that runs on Windows 10 is probably going to run really well on the Surface. And I think looking at something like Photoshop and seeing that Photoshop runs fairly well is a pretty good indication that a program like Corel's Painter is probably going to work pretty well too. Hey man, I returned the Surface Pro 3 because the pressure sensitivity did not pick up the light strokes of my sketch drawing style. I hear they increased the pressure levels. How do extremely light strokes register for you? Thanks. That's a good question. I tried light strokes and I didn't seem to have any problem with it. Another thing that's happened is when the Surface Pro 3 was released, there was no way to adjust the pressure curve for that sort of thing. And since then, Windows has released a utility that does that where you can adjust that pressure sensitivity curve. So Microsoft may have released something already that fixes that specific problem for you. I'm sensing a pattern here with your Surface reviews. By the time the Surface Pro 7 rolls around, you're going to have a full-on Gandalf beer. Thanks for the review. I accept your challenge, sir. Is the Surface Pro 4 better than the Wacom Cintiq 13 HD? I get these kind of questions a lot. Is the Surface better than a Toshiba tablet? Is it better than this Wacom thing? It all really comes down to you, how you draw, what you like, and that sort of thing. Some people really like having face buttons on their tablet that do undo and control and shift and that sort of thing, and you're not going to get that on a Surface or an iPad. Some people don't mind not having the hardware buttons and having them on the screen or just not having available at all. Wacom also puts a texture on all their tablets, so it gives it kind of more of a slightly more realistic drawing experience, and some people really like that, so that's another preference you should check out. So for questions like these that ask specifically what's better than this or this or this, it's hard because you're not comparing apples to apples. So there you go. I didn't answer your question at all. Sorry. The taper effect, also known as the shoestring or shoelace effect, is a problem I've had with Intuos drawing tablets in the past. Messing around with the pen settings should be able to fix it. Try reducing the sensitivity on the lighter end of the pressure spectrum so that you have to press slightly harder to get it to register your ink. I know this isn't a question, but I thought this was a really awesome comment, so I figured it would be worth reading. One, I didn't know it was called the shoelace effect, so it's kind of nice to know that. And two, that's a really good point, that by just playing with the pressure curve, you can kind of fix that yourself. I should also say that I posted that specific problem that I had on the Microsoft forums for them to check out and just kind of see what's going on. And a lot of people have gone in there and commented and said, hey, what's going on, Microsoft? Why haven't you fixed this yet? And someone just commented in the last couple days and said, hey, we were working hard on it and it's going to be in a future update. And so that's the good news right there, is that the taper problem that I described in my last video does not, or it's a software thing. It's not a hardware thing. So it's something they're working on and something they're going to fix, which I kind of had a hunch about. Yay, Microsoft. Thoughts about the Surface Book? You know, I was trying to decide whether to pick up the Surface Pro 4 to review or whether to pick up a actual Surface Book, because they both came out at the same time. And I decided on the Pro mostly because of the kickstand. I like the kickstand. And when you look at the specs of the Surface Book, you can actually get very, very similar specs in terms of the processor and the RAM and the hard drive that you can to the Surface Pro. So they're very, very, very similar machines. The one difference with the Surface Book is that you can get a keyboard with the graphics processor in the slightly higher end version. So if you're going to be running games or that sort of thing, Surface Book is much better. For illustration, I don't know if that's going to matter too much. Maybe if you're doing animation or 3D rendering, that might be a really important thing for you. Self-destruct sequence? What? Most people understand that was a joke. I'm sure this commenter did too. Windows doesn't need a self-destruct button to crash. That was a joke too. That totally was a joke too. I'm kidding. But not really. 12:34, the moment the Apple Kool-Aid kicks in, desperately hoping that the company's Surface clone is as amazing as their usual hyperbole and spin says it is. Hey, maybe next year they'll even copy the kickstand. Man, you mention one Apple product and the haters just roll on in. First of all, I would love it if Apple copied the kickstand on the iPad Pro. They never will. I look back just a couple years and I think about like what we had, and the only option if you wanted to draw on screen were the Wacom Cintiqs. I had a little 12-inch that had a little really low resolution, and I loved it for the time, but comparing it to what we have now, wow, things are like so much better. The point I'm trying to make here is the iPad Pro and the Surface Pro are about the same $1,000 as that Wacom Cintiq was just a few years ago. They do so much more. They're so much better. The resolution is so much better. There's just across the board, they're better products. No matter which one you choose, whether you go with the Apple and the Pencil, or whether you go with the Surface Pro, or whether you go with one of the new Wacoms, or whether you go with some of the other cheaper Wacom alternatives out there, you're getting a really good product. Overall, I'm just blown away by how much good stuff is out there. It frustrates me sometimes when you get all these comments about people who are bitter because there's a company called Apple and it exists. Everybody's making good hardware. We're living in a good time. Celebrate. It's driving prices down. It's making better products for you and me. So there we go. I tried to sort through the comments the best I can, and I really appreciate you guys leaving those. I've said this before, I figure I'll elaborate on it here at the end of this video, is that oftentimes I answer on Twitter faster. The reason for that isn't because I like Twitter more, it's just actually, I do. The main reason is that the Google commenting system gets really cluttered, and it's hard to tell which comments are new because it only shows the first bunch, and then you have to say load more, and sometimes the more popular ones float to the top, and new ones get lost. It's just, YouTube doesn't have good UX, I guess. So if you have a question, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will see it eventually. Or you can hit me up on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed it. Tell your friends, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'll see you in a few weeks with some more reviews.